Directors meeting for MSAD 60 for January 16th, 2025. Let's start the evening by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to invite Allison to please read the public input statement.
Okay. The first public input session is a 21-minute session with each person having no longer than 3 minutes in which to make a statement. But a second public input session may be held at the end of the meeting if allowed by the board chair. Each speaker will give his or her name, address, and reason for speaking. Public input is designated for district residents, but the board chair may grant non-residents the opportunity to address the board. Statements concerning subject matter that falls under the law regarding executive sessions, for example, matters involving personnel, cannot be made during public input. We as a community pledge to treat each other as we wish to be treated. We pledge to seek understanding when there may be disagreement. Regardless of outcomes or opinions, we pledge to move forward with respect. This is time for comments and/or questions for the board, but please be aware the questions may not be able to be answered at this meeting.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite anybody from the public who would like to make a public statement.
I can see the lights back from my eyes. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Karen Saracena. I live at 20 Maple Street, Norfolk, Maine. A little history in me. I have 3 grown children that went through the SAD 60 school district. I volunteered for over 20 years running the Giving Tree program by myself between all the elementary schools and the high school. And I assisted with the startup of the Ryan Home, giving them some really good fundraising ideas that they use today. Tonight I'm here to talk about my grandson, who is a wonderful, curious boy. He's also autistic and has Asperger's syndrome, which makes life very complicated. Sadly, when he goes to school, he becomes a fearful, lost boy because of bullying. He's been physically assaulted in kindergarten. The most recent incident happened before Christmas, where 2 students put their hands on him and said they were going to choke him. He's been dragged by a shirt. Since going back to school after Christmas, he's not eating lunch anymore because he's in line with them. And he can't, he gets overwhelmed with emotions. He asks to go to a quiet room and he's sometimes denied that opportunity. Students tell him that he's dumb and stupid and he actually believes the words they say. I don't know why there hasn't been a monitoring of interactions since this started earlier in the year. I don't know how much he's expected to endure, but every day he begs not to go to school or to go to another school. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to hear that. Move on to our next agenda item, which is the minutes, approving the minutes of December 19th, 2024. Do we have any comments or updates? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Alva.
I'll second.
Thank you, Peg. Motion to approve was seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the Maine Municipal Bond Bank.
Denise is coming up to give us some information. As you may recall, when we were working through the SRRF or the HVAC funding last year, when we got some of those grants, we had the Knowlton School that had an estimate that was above what the state would grant us. So this is just a follow-up from that. We approved it all to go through, but this is just the paperwork to accomplish that.
So the Knowlton School was the project that had 4 project expenses that the project and the SRF program would allow. They have a $2 million cap. There was $56,350. That would be over that amount. When we submitted our paperwork for that approval, we also sent in a letter that asked them to include this 356,000 in a general resolution bond. And what happens is twice a year, the main bond bank has a bond issue, and all of the cities, towns, and schools who need to have bonds, we kind of go together in a group, and they go out and bid it and get pricing and bond interest and all of that. So we decided to go out in the spring bond issue. Generally, the timeline, February is the application deadline, which we've already satisfied. March is the application approval. In April, they give loan agreements to and from our bond council. So Drummond Woodson has to prepare all the legal documents for us. In late April, the bond bank gets pricing. In May, the final documents come from the bond council, and bond proceeds are available late in May. So we will have this money available before our final payment next fall. We were approved for a 10-year repayment. That can't be paid off early. We have to stick to the 10 years. The fall bond issue that happened, I was looking at some of their interest rates. The 10-year term for the bond issue in the fall was 2.859%. When I go out there and do an estimate for our debt service, it's looking somewhere between $40,000 and $45,000 in payments a year. That would be interest and principal. And we would start repayment in November of 25. The first year is a smaller payment. So fiscal 26, the payment would be somewhere between 10 and 15,000 because it's interest only that first year. Usually you pay interest in May and interest and principal in November, but the first year you only pay interest. So there are actually 21 payments over the course of that time. I'm not sure if you need any other information or have any questions. Okay, so Audra has a form prepared by, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was a little slow on the uptake. So how much interest dollar wise are we paying?
So the rates won't get set until they go out for pricing in April. But what they have is they have an amortization schedule builder. This interest rate here looks to be 3.25 to 3.5. And on the 356, the interest is almost 77,000 over the 10 years.
Around 77,000,
I'm sorry,
around 77,000.
around 77, yeah. And again, these were estimates. Again, the fall percentages came in lower. So if we come in lower, there would be less interest. But that swings both ways too. So Audra has the official form that will need to be signed by the board members to approve and send to the bond bank and our attorneys.
Okay. And so we need a formal motion, and it's right here. If anybody wants to read that. Thank you. Elva, it's highlighted. Is it one there?
Okay.
Got it.
I move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Issuance of $356,350 General Obligation Bonds to Finance a $356,350 minor capital project be adopted in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be filed with the minutes of this meeting. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Those who are not in favor? And the motion is passed.
Okay, we do have a signature page. I'm going to pass that out right now. So I'll start it over here.
Please use the black
Black
pen.
pen.
There you go. Yeah, it's not like that other here.
Oh, sorry.
Just make sure that, yeah, you have black.
Is it black?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Official business. Black and blue. Not red, huh?
Thank you.
Because you have dog. These nice. Erasable pens.
I've seen them. I have a granddaughter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the December financial summary.
That again was attached to the agenda. Just put that up here. So believe it or not, halfway through another fiscal year. Again, our state subsidy and our local tax revenue are on target. We still have approximately 12% unencumbered for the expenses. And we have been watching all of our, transportation, our electric, and the electric, that information that they were raising rates in January, we haven't received those bills yet. So we'll be able to see what that looks like in the next month or so. We also are kind of going through halfway, making sure we're looking at some of the details of things that have posted through the accounts, making sure things are in the right place. One of the things we wanted to talk to you about tonight is revenue related, however, has to do with main care, which was $100,000 line item that we put in the fiscal 25 budget. And it has to do with billing for speech, physical therapy, and occupational therapy services. And I'm going to let Sue chat a little bit about that.
So I think I talked with the board in our budget season about accessing main care funds through billing. And that there are other districts that are utilizing those services and have been able to, bring in some decent revenue. As we have looked at it more carefully, and we went forward in a pretty kind of proactive way, hoping to be able to access this up to that $100,000 mark. As we're looking at everything, it is a little more intensive than I think had anticipated. So we worked with the company. We signed on with a company that does a lot of the back part of it because it is very complicated. And one of the issues that we're having is that the return on investment is not where we would like it to be honest with you. In order to receive the funding for OT, PT, and speech, there's a large amount of work that the OT, that our providers need to do, as well as sort of the backdoor stuff with our administrative assistants and things like that. And as we've been sort of calculating cost versus the win, I guess I would say, it's becoming pretty clear that this is actually revenue neutral. What's going to happen is that we would end up having to hire someone to actually manage all of the day-to-day data that needs to be collected, as well as we need to make sure families are on board and sign off that they're willing to share their main care, information, that kind of thing. They have to sign approval that they're willing to be a part of the billing services. So it's becoming a lot more complicated for an amount of money that we are unsure that would actually be generated. The other piece of it is the state takes a portion of that fund. So one of the things that's really important is that main care billing is encouraged by the state. They would like us to do that because then they take it off our subsidy if we do get that funding. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. And as we dug into it more deeply, to be honest with you, that's where we've come to the point of like, is this actually a real cost benefit for us? And we are not seeing that at this point. So Josh, you got some questions.
Yeah, so like, I guess two questions. So main care and subsidy are like, aren't they both main funds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but so they'll take it away, right? So if we get support through main care, then that fund comes off of the subsidy for the schools.
In total, like it's a dollar for dollar.
No, I'm gonna ask Denise because she has a better handle on that part.
So, it's approximately 38-39% that the state recoups. And the way it was explained to me is that for every $100, the state has main care has a reimbursement rate, but the state has to pay the entire claim. So if the state has to make the claim whole, we get the federal, we get the main care money. And then they take 38% off of our subsidy to recoup the amount that main care didn't pay us, that they had to cover. So they are basically recouping their expense, but taking it out of our subsidy.
It is a little complicated, and I think that's why, like, it's complicated. So I think as we dug more deeply into it, we're like, is this actually a benefit to the district, or is it going to actually incur costs that will actually just make it revenue neutral, which is not like, do we want to do this work? We're not really actually bringing in the actual revenue.
Why do other districts do it?
So there's a couple of different things. There's another layer. So we used to do it a long time ago. And it was a little, I will say, looser in terms of the way that things were monitored. So we are very, like Denise is awesome at making sure that we stay very, very above board on everything. So there's a piece of it where there may be some looseness, I guess, in other districts that I'm not willing to do. Secondly, there's another whole component. It's called the behavioral health component, where there are districts that hire behavioral health providers, BHPs, they call them, and those are reimbursed at a higher rate. And so those districts that are actually, I think, working in that capacity, utilizing funds that way, are probably making that gain there. We do not have any numbers of behavioral health providers in our district. So social workers could indeed be on that level, but there's another whole. It's just we weren't going there yet. That's just not where we're going.
So is this one of the things that we should be talking to our legislators about? I mean, is this would be good for our district, but is an absolute nightmare, which is why we don't do it. And since there's, policy,
I'm absolutely.
Is it a policy? Is it a legislator policy problem? Is that the issue?
I don't know the answer to that question, Josh, to be honest. I'm not going to pretend I do. Yeah.
I don't know that I know, but what I think I know is that the state got in a lot of trouble with how they were handling main care and
years ago,
being reimbursed. And that was at 10 or 15 years ago that we were doing that. Now they had to change the way they do it. So this plan, the way they do it now, has been in place for maybe 10 years. Like, it's been a while. And they say it's people complained when it first kind of came around, and they said it's really the only way that they can satisfy the rules of the federal government as it relates to how they process and distribute money. So I don't know at what level it's a problem. I just know that, bringing, doing all the work, but netting almost nothing. doesn't make sense.
So that, with that, you know, we talked with the company that we were working with and we have stepped out of the contract with them and they were very gracious, honestly, because we are not the only people that are stepping out of contracts about this because of of the struggle, right? It's like, is the work, I mean, we're all willing to do the work if it's going to benefit financially the district. If it's not going to benefit the district, though, we have other things we can certainly be paying attention to. So with that, though,
And it was duplicative. The
yes,
system we would have to enter information into would be an exact duplicate of information we have in systems in-house. And they were never going to be able to talk together. So all of the updating was manual, all of it.
Yeah.
Like, and just as you peel back the layers of the onion, it was clear.
yeah.
As we go deeper, we got clear.
But I personally felt pretty like about it because I felt pretty strongly that we could do this. And have the benefit financially to the district, but we were like looking at it going, okay, this is not going to happen. So we need to talk about it with the board and let them know. We do have some, I'm going to let Denise talk about this, but like with that, like, oh boy, we have, okay, this is how we're going to handle that loss.
Okay, so, as this was special education revenue, what I've been looking at is the special education budget for the year. And the double-edged sword of not having filled all the ed tech positions we've had this year means that we have some extra now that we can use to offset this. So there's money that we have not spent that we would not spend. I believe the beginning of the year, we were 3 ed techs down, 3 or 4, and we have fluctuated up and down throughout all the months. And I think today we were at 7 or 8. So when I look at the amounts we've paid to ed techs for salary, and when I look at 8 unfilled positions that potentially, if we hired everyone tomorrow, would use half a year expense, that would come out to approximately $25,000 in ed tech. For 8 positions is $200,000 that we would need to reserve. And I have approximately 380 in unspent and unencumbered ed tech positions currently. So I think that even if, again, we were to hire all 8 positions tomorrow, what we would use for the rest of the year and the loss of this revenue, so not using this excess, the other excess would cover that revenue loss.
It's not how we want to roll, but it is how it is right now. And we continually advertise for positions. So it's not like we're not trying to fill them. It's part of the conversation.
I do have another question, not related to that. Just because I don't know what it is, under revenue category, there's a state subsidy, local tax revenue, fund balance to be used, and then other. What is the other revenue category? I think you've explained it before, but I'm so sorry. I'm just gonna keep asking.
For sure. It's something because it's general and you look at this once a month. How are you going to remember?
I wish I would.
For sports fees. It's for bank interest. It's for any kind of unplanned revenue that comes through the door. Maybe we sell a bus. Maybe we have a refund on something. So it's all of those miscellaneous things combined into one. The place you would find more of that detail is if you go back to the budget documents and go to the revenue page, that will list out all of those other categories. So the fund balance is separate. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks. Moving on to item number 6, we're going to go through policy second readings. These are for the harassment and sex harassment policies. ACAA, ACAA R1, and ACAA R2.
I just became aware in the last week, there's been a federal rule that struck down a lot of the language that's currently in there. So I move that we send the policy back to the policy committee to be reviewed in light of the recent changes in legality language.
We haven't heard anything from, Drummond and Woodsum yet on that, and so,
Yeah.
yes,
I'm just uncomfortable approving policy that, I mean, we know, you read about it in Education Week. It's been struck down. It's a lot of the language that was approved and was put in April has been struck down, and I'm sure is aware of it. Of course, I think January 9th was when the ruling was. They're clearly not going to have information for us within a week's time, but I would anticipate that it is coming, and it just seems not a good use of our time to approve something and then have it change and go through it all over again. It just seems like, why don't we wait until that's my reasoning for it. So I move that we table it, send it back to the committee until it can be written properly.
Josh, is this in regard to the legislation that was passed about trans students and athletics?
Not specifically athletics, but it does include that, right? It's on the gender identity protections, all those different things that were put in. That was a change to Title IX, which is one of the major changes within this.
Okay, so it really has not been signed by the president yet.
It struck down in federal court. It's applying.
Oh, it's, okay.
There was a federal, and I can send the Ed Wheat article if you'd like to just read it. It's good information. Again, it's just use of our
Okay.
time. I think our time is valuable, and that's my suggestion. Or that's my motion, and obviously we need a second and a vote if we're going to do that.
Then we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, all right. So do we, did the motion pass?
No, no, so three. Yeah, so I think we can review and not, and recognize that we're going to be looking at it. Yep.
Okay, so, when you received, thank you. When you received, the agenda last week, Jen also sent the, electronic versions of these updated policy, which is ACAA, and then the procedures. So ACAAR1, ACRR2. Just a few things to note about this. She sent a clean copy. She also sent you the copy that the committee was working off of so that you could see some of those shifts and those changes. The district has never had ACAA R2. So that in one color, because it has not ever been something that we've had. Again, these documents are recommendations from Drummond Woodsum, which is the law firm that we work with, the education law firm. And if any changes are made to these, they need to go back to the law firm so that they can look at them, to vet them, to make sure that they fall within the boundaries of the intent of harassment and sexual harassment. So the purpose of tonight is that this is a second read. At our last board meeting, you had a first read, which was the policy that we currently use. This opportunity is the second read, which means that the committee has met twice. We've put forward the changes, and it is to have some questions or discussion at this point. And if possible, the motion to approve them so that we can reinstate or put these forward in our policy manual and move ahead with them. Or if there are further questions or discussions that you can take at that point as well. So in the packet that you have the clean version, which is just one color, and then the version that has the crossouts or the strike throughs and the red font. Just so you can see how the committee kind of went through this and looked at it, and see the final version.
I have a question. So when it comes to like the code of conduct and behavior at the different school levels, I feel like we've heard a lot in the middle school and the high school about how they enforce this policy in particular. And I feel like we're missing, or I haven't seen in my time here, the same kind of rundown from the elementary and Knowlton schools. So I was wondering if we could like get them kind of back in to see how they're dealing with bullying at that age.
We can do that.
I thought I turned that on. I did.
To our bullying policy, CK, and that is a whole perspective that, Dan's, this is harassment, sexual harassment. And so we do follow the policy at the elementary, all the levels, K-12, for JICK bullying, and we go through that process. And, there is a determination for that process and that, you know, we follow that and we go through that. So there is a determination, but we can certainly talk through some of that. I know we have a code of conduct committee meeting coming up, but we can also talk to the principals to talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Ask a question.
Sure.
So the federal courts have just shut down the gender identity, pronoun identification, that's, if I'm not mistaken. So how does that, if we vote this, and does that mean our district superseded?
Violation.
If we vote this in, I'm not going to talk about violation or not violation. What I would say is if we vote this in and if we had a Title IX issue happen yet tomorrow, we would start the process of investigating.
Right.
But what I will also say is we will certainly tomorrow talk to Drummond, no matter what happens tonight with this, just to get a sense of what we're doing. But as
Supersede the federal, we can't. I just don't know how, I mean, I know the federal, the state, we all have to abide by the second or the third, or whatever. We can't be above it or below it, but we don't have to, we will change this
if we need, yes.
we would have to change,
Yes,
I would presume if, okay. So does it make sense to,
For the next 7 days, we can protect
I can't understand.
children.
I didn't hear you.
I said for the next 7 days, at least, we can protect trans children at the school. By signing this in.
One of the things I said during our policy committee was I'd love to see us add a statement at the beginning of policy ACAA. And that the sentence would read something like this: the MSAD 60 does not permit harassment of any kind. However, state law, federal law, federal law, if you want to hyphenate it, requires the district to state the following, and then continue with the policy. As an educator who works in schools, kids are harassed because of their physical characteristics. They are harassed because of their poverty. They are harassed because of where they live. They are harassed for a variety of reasons that are not protected under this policy. And as we discussed in our policy committee, we address all of those issues. So I don't see how we can say following federal law means that we're not going to protect kids of a different identity. Like I don't permit it at all for any reason. And I'm shocked that, you know, we write these things and, okay, so I understand school districts have to, right, protect these. I would like to say as a district, we protect all of our students. Period. We don't allow harassing for any reason beyond federal, state. We're required to write this. I get it. We are required by federal law to write some of this. But we should protect all. So that's why I say that sentence, MSAD 60 does not permit harassment of any kind. However, federal and state law requires the district to state the following, and then that's when it would pick up with that bulleted list.
Right. And when we talked about that at the policy committee meeting, I thought we were going to get a copy of that to send to, and that didn't come through.
Yep.
So-
And I figured I can still bring it up here because, I'm sorry, I should be speaking into this.
Sorry.
I figured we could still bring it up here because this is still the editing process, right?
Yep. Okay. And I figured it was good, not just for our policy committee, but it was good for us as a whole board to have that discussion. I didn't, because our small group we weren't in full agree, it wasn't like a unanimous agreement. And so I was like, well, maybe it's not really unanimous. And so it was better to have a full board discussion on that.
Sure. Honestly, I think it's probably more about seeing the language. It's easier if you can see it, but it's all good.
I would just sort of argue that the reason the law was put in place was because those people have not been well protected historically. So I sort of second what Allison said. While we can do it, I'd like to do it, and I'm assuming we'll get guidance from Drummond and Woodson, and we have been somewhat out of compliance by not having these in place. So for now, to the best of our knowledge, this puts us in compliance, correct?
Correct. So things went into place in August, and school districts right now are all in the process of changing their policies throughout Maine. So yes, yeah. So I think just, there are two ways to go here, right? There can be a motion to approve, and a vote, or there can be, a work session. Yeah, like this could be like, we want to send this back for editing, if there are any edits.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I make a motion to approve as written.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been brought to the floor and seconded. Do we have those in favor? Could you?
Pre-discussion.
More discussion, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Discussion.
Before we vote, I think we just need to think about the implications of our decision. It's obvious that this is going to go through another change. We all acknowledge that as a federal court that has impact. It's well written, it's well documented. I encourage you to check it out. But I think the implications of our decision tonight is if we approve this, and we are approving the time, the resources, everything to go to our staff, to our admin, to everything for all these edits to happen, to update on the website. There's a lot of time and hours and money that we obviously talk a lot about that we don't have much of. And I just think that it's unwise of us to put all this time and energy of our staff into this that we know we're going to have to revisit. It just doesn't seem like a prudent decision. And I wanted to state that.
Can I ask how much time that is? You think that that's a significant amount of time and effort to post these?
To post them, no.
Won't it cause confusion to post these for 7 days and then pull them back out again? I mean, isn't that just going to cause unnecessary? Yeah. I mean, and I think that to think that the children are not protected for the next 7 days is a little bit, these kids are protected. They've always been protected.
I'm not sure it would cause confusion. I'm just trying to run scenarios.
I just, if we put it out there and then we pull it back and then we put it back out again, does it make us look like we're not really? I don't know. I just think that you put something out and then all of a sudden you pull it back. Nope, this isn't right. We've got to change it and put it back out again. Doesn't that just create?
I think some of that goes to the procedures, right? Because some of the procedures are where some of the bigger changes are.
Okay.
And those are mostly what we would follow within the buildings.
Okay. All right.
I think, as we looked at this and we shifted it, we changed, we have an email address. We would still, regardless of what policy we would enact or how it would look, we would still have an email address. That Title IX coordinator, who right now is Sue, would work with that family, work with that student, and be really clear about the processes.
I'm sorry. Lauren is texting me, but
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
understanding what she's asking me.
And when I say, when I say they're not protected for the next few days, I mean, there's a reason why each one of these groups is listed separately. It's because historically they are not protected without that wording. So while we can, I believe it should be in there. If they want to take it out, then that's obviously out of our hands, but That's where I stand on that.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go, Lauren.
Okay. So what policy is this? ACAA, the page 1 under definitions, the second sentence defines the affirmative action officer AAO, and that's where it defines what AAO means. I believe in the rewrite, there is no definition of what, I mean, you can tell what it means, but if this is a true policy, I believe we need to state like AAO, like we need to put that in parentheses after what it's actually called. And I think we took that out, but I could be wrong. I'm not seeing it anywhere though. Does that make sense?
In the R1, or is that
I
a?
know what you're saying.
ACAA, Lauren?
Yeah.
Are you sure it's not the R1 policy that you're looking at?
Yes.
No. Hold on.
Because I don't see it in the AA.
So I think she's
Hold on. I'm losing my papers.
just moved it up, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. R1.
Yeah, okay. So are
Yes,
we on
R1,
AA
sorry.
right now? Are we on the first one?
ACAR1.
'Cause these are all individual that we're gonna go through, right?
I don't know. I think there was a motion.
I thought we were talking about all of them. My second was.
I'll go through together. I mean,
Okay.
that's what the motion was.
R1.
So definitions, Lauren, you said?
Yep. So, and it could very easily be put in the top section, that last little paragraph, any individual who is unsure about whether unlawful discrimination, blah, blah, blah. It does say at the end of that sentence, affirmative action officer, it could very easily be put in there, parentheses, AAO, and that would take care
Oh,
of it.
gotcha.
But I think we took
I see
out,
what you're saying.
under definitions, we took out the affirmative action officer, parentheses, AAO, and so we technically did not define that acronym in the rewrite.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I think
Yeah.
I believe like proper procedure, we need to have that in.
I agree.
okay.
The
Are
other
we waiting for?
thing,
I was just enjoying the nice.
the other thing is I
No
noticed
more
too.
discussion. It's time to vote.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Lauren, were you saying something?
Yeah, the other thing, well, so I feel like that needs to be put in. I think that edit needs to be made before like that policy specifically can be approved, I would recommend. But the other switch too is if we don't want to put in the definition, ACAAR2 actually spells out affirmative action officer everywhere it's referenced. It does not use an acronym for that. So that would be another option. But I do think that is something that has to be adjusted because otherwise when you're reading the policy, if you're not like looking for it, you don't know what the AAO is.
So we,
My 2 cents.
so on those cases, we can just add it in that first section after where it says, does that work for you, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just noticed the other one did the opposite. So like, I think either is fine, but I do think it either needs to be spelled out everywhere or if we're using an acronym, like the definition needs to come with the acronym.
Yep, that makes sense.
Were there any other areas that people had input for? You want to revise the motion on the floor to include that, those amended edits?
But as amended, no.
As amended, yeah.
Second?
All those in favor of the motion as amended? All those opposed? And the motion is passed.
I did, just share that article that Josh was referencing from Ed Week so that everybody can read that. The,
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, unemployment.
Okay. Let's see, we have some employment to talk about. I just have to find my documents here. So we have a, resignation of, Taylor Combs from the middle school. She was, on family medical leave and she has, given us her resignation. So we need a motion to accept that.
Second,
And what was that person's role?
English ELA at the middle school. Yep.
we have a motion to accept that resignation and it's been seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion's passed.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Alva?
Oh, no, I made a motion.
Oh,
You made the motion, didn't you? Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Thank
and then
you.
The next one, we have two retirements as of the end of the school year, not right now. So we have Lori Lodge, who's the current assistant principal at Lebanon Elementary and Hanson School. She's been with us for 3 years. So she has submitted her retirement letter again as effective in June at the last week of school for administrators. So we need a motion for that as well.
Motion with congratulations for her.
And do we have a second? Second. Alva? We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded to accept that resignation. All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
And the motion is passed.
Okay, good. And our final one is James McDonald, Jim McDonald. He's been with us for quite some time. And he is currently at the high school, social studies, and he submitted his retirement letter as well. I think it's been about 30 years.
Oh, my goodness.
39.
Wow.
Years.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, I'll make that motion with thanks and congrats.
We have a second?
I'll second.
From Alva. We have a motion to accept his resignation. It's been seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion is passed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is our superintendent update.
Okay, so we have a few updates to share. The first one is that I'll kind of hand this out as I'm going through it. We did some, last week, we did send out a pre-K survey. And that survey, the goal of the survey was just to gauge interest in that. So this is some compiled information on that. The good thing that this did was really solidify for us that we would have interest to fill the classrooms. And so I'll just go through this. We had very quickly, like that survey went out at like 4:00. We had over 100, responses right away. So we total, as of this time, we have 305 responses. 145 responded that not having access to public pre-K affects their ability to work. 155 of the survey participants said that they will have a child who will be 4 years old by October 15th for the 25-26 school year. And these 155 respondents were able to move to the section 2 of the survey, which was if you have a child that's going to be of age, go to this part. So of the 155 respondents, 121 or 78.1% indicated they would be very likely to enroll in the district's full-day, 5-day-a-week program for the 25-26 school year. And this number already exceeds our capacity. There was some, a section on needs, like any kind of developmental or learning issues or learning challenges. So there were 14 responses about needs, and that's already in addition to the information that we have from Child Development Services. And then we also asked a question on transportation about our transportation versus parent transportation or family transportation. 14 of the 155 respondents, which is 9%, indicated that transportation would be a necessity. 74 respondents stated that they would arrange their own transportation. So that was a little surprising for us, just how low that first number was. But it's all good information. So in addition to that, we also send out some communication to our area daycare providers that have pre-K available. And so we sent some information out, and we will be having like a public just a meeting and a gathering with them to provide more information and talk about, our next steps for that. This week, we also met with the Department of Education, the early childhood group, and we're going to begin our 2 meetings a month discussions with them, just as far as when things are due, timelines, hiring, all of those things. So we are in very good shape to move ahead. And again, I think one of the other parts of that survey helped us do is we know that there were some things coming up, some questions coming up from the community. So we know how we need to respond to some of that, which was good information for us to have to know, like, not only do we need to work with the parents or families of the students that have potential 4-year-olds or incoming 4-year-olds, but we also want to have bigger conversations with the community about the impact of the grant and the impact of public pre-K. So that's that.
When would applications start happening?
Pretty soon. I'm not immediately, but pretty soon. I would say probably March or April. We have to have a few more meetings with our consultants at the Department of Ed just to kind of talk through some of that.
Okay.
But yes, we don't want this, we don't need to drag it out. We need to, and we start our kindergarten registrations typically right after April break or before April break, sometimes depending on when April break falls. So try to align that a little bit. So that's one thing. A couple other things. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Under the needs, the 14 responses there. It says in addition to the data we already have from CDS. So was there overlap in that, or is it 14?
In addition.
What was already given? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Are those needs, are they given priority when it comes to placement, or is that?
Well, in our application process, there are weighted sections,
Thank you.
and that will be one of the sections that's weighted. One of the things that we talked about yesterday when we were talking with the consultants from the early childhood part of the department was we really want to achieve a mirroring of what's happening in our school. So if we have, a certain amount of students in the school or in the district that are, have economically disadvantaged, we want to make sure that we're mirroring that so that we get the best grouping that looks as similar to our student body as we do now. So, for example, we have 18% students identified with special education. So, mirroring some of those areas, Yeah, so we'll be looking at that and trying to, our application process will go through that.
And the other gap that I saw was just, what happens at the other 40% regarding transportation? Like 10% said they need transportation, nearly 50% said that they would arrange their own. I'm wondering what the other 40% did.
Take advantage of it if it's there. is I think what they would do. You know, if it's being offered, they'll
It's really
probably take
10%
it.
to 90%.
Yeah, more than likely.
No, so.
No, the other way around.
The other way around, 50%
Yeah.
would provide their own and
Yeah.
50% would need a rate.
And in some cases, that mirrors the way that things are. If you go to any of the schools, pick up and drop off, parents are picking up and dropping off their kids, you know, a lot. Yeah. So very similar.
We have to create bus seats for them, even though parents pick up and drop off. correct?
We do.
That is absolute. Yep. Yeah. Which is so, but as the year progresses, we tend to like look at our loads and be like, okay, this child has really never ridden the bus. So, you know, we figure it out from there.
Yeah, I mean, I recall my days of transportation,
Yep.
like the assigned
Numbers.
load numbers on the bus was acted into the formula for compensation for the drivers, the company and all that stuff, and for state funding. You know, but the assigned load didn't always or rarely
Right.
matched
Right.
the actual load. So
Right.
I thought that was always a big hole and something that, I don't know if we're able to do something about that to again, right?
The drivers,
What we're doing.
honestly, the drivers do a great job of being able to say, listen, we can consolidate some things here, but if for some reason there's another influx of kiddos in the mid, they rearrange themselves. They're pretty good about that. Because we are so tight with our drivers and the fact that we, so the runs are tight for that reason. That's
My understanding of the software we have makes it very easy
Yeah.
to add in and take out. Like, that was the reason why we got the software. So that's very easy, plug and play, change.
Yes.
If you have a big influx, that changes overnight.
right. And it's great for families, like
Mhm.
parents can really utilize it.
Thank you.
Nancy?
I'm just curious as to the other 150. We had 305 people respond, but they didn't have kids coming to preschool. Why? That seems a little, to me, that seems a little strange that people responded to a survey that so what,
Curiosity maybe, or even the fact that maybe they have even younger students, maybe not 4-year-olds,
They didn't-
but 3-year-olds that are,
were just kind of,
because it went to
Right.
all of our parents, of our families. So, you know, so some folks ignored it and then some folks decided to respond. There was some interesting Facebook conversations. So because of it.
miss those. Okay.
So it's all good. Very.
So what is the, right now, how many kids can Jenny have? How much space
So
does she handle at this
in
point?
each program, including that one, so Lebanon, Berwick, and North Berwick, we can have 2 classrooms with 16 students each and 2 adults.
So 16 at this point at every location?
Yes.
Times two.
Times 2.
2 classrooms of 16 each. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I got lost.
Yeah.
The YMCA does this for Sanford.
Before care?
In
Or
Sanford, the
pre-K?
pre-K.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was thinking they were all being consolidated.
Okay, and just a few more updates. During break, we did have some electrical things going on at Hussey School, which we talked a little bit about, but I just want to fill you in again that it was, as we mentioned in the emails, it was quite significant. The damage to Hussey School was quite significant. Earlier this week, our claims going through, our insurance company has been great. Mechanical Services that actually did all the work in the building for the last year and a half have been very responsive as well. And so again, earlier this week, CMP came down with our insurance company and Kevin, and they spent the day at Hussey School looking at all of the damage that caused. So we're moving ahead, like I said, with the claim, and I just wanted to keep you updated on that because it's going to be a lot of money. So we do know that, and we are working really hard to work with our insurance company to make sure everything is all set on our end so that when that, with that claim, we had we had everybody in working during New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, the rest of that week, the start of school. So there's a lot of pieces to it in not only in equipment, but in personnel. So I just wanted to keep you updated on that.
Just a weird question. Why is our insurance company covering this and not CMP if it's their mistake?
Right. So right now it's happening that way that we're writing the claim. Our insurance company is going to cover it. They're going to recoup, they're going to recoup the money from CMP.
Just thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
They're just doing the work
With
ahead, because the other pieces are these vendors who are really been here doing all of this work need to be paid. And we don't want to spend a dime out of our regular budget. So, they've been great, actually. They've been great about it.
Everybody's been great. And this is millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Crazy. It was unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And we were very fortunate that there wasn't a fire. We were very fortunate that we're not in.
Yeah.
And
We were very fortunate the temperatures were not below
Right.
zero, even below freezing that particular time frame. It was, if all things have to align and way to support us, I guess that was it. It's crazy.
And we wouldn't expect our policy, to be increased.
Oh, I asked specifically.
Yes.
First question.
Figured that was, that's a no-brainer, but to ask, right? Better to ask than assume.
We were very upfront about that. Yeah.
So that's good. And just two other updates. As we're heading into the budget season, March, really, we go gangbusters on that. Our February meetings, we're going to talk a little bit more on just preparing for the budget process. So doing some groundwork as far as curriculum, instruction. We're going to have some teachers come in, some administrators talk about things that are going on in the class, supportive measures on both ends and all ends of the spectrum of when you think about students and student learning, just to help with an understanding as we go into budget season and start talking about some programming or some different things that we may be asking for educationally. So just be on the lookout for that. That's going to be the February 6th meeting. We have that lined up, and we'll have another meeting, in February to talk more about academics and other things. Just looking ahead to March, we have Harriman who will be coming in to talk about the facility study. We have a meeting with them in the next couple of weeks to just run through that in a little more detail, what they've done. We're waiting on enrollment. They were working with NASDAQ to do some enrollment numbers, and they noticed some errors. So they kicked that back. And as soon as all that information is together, we'll have a meeting with them and they'll go through things. So prior to the March 6th, we'll have information for you so you can look at it. So when they come in to present and talk about their findings, you'll have read some of their information ahead of that. So just wanted to put those, though those are out a little bit, they're important areas that we'll talk about.
Yep.
Thanks. That's it.
Okay. So asking the board now if there are any other issues or items that you'd like to discuss. Allison?
I have one, and I don't know where I could find this on my own, but I'm sure it's negotiated by the teachers union, but I'm wondering what our maternity and paternity leave policies are. If I could be sent that would be cool.
Okay. Did have one other thing I wanted to mention. Sorry.
That's okay.
Eustaquio, this is for Eustaquio. He wanted me to mention this. We are starting to look at our webpage. It's been revamped a little bit. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at it, but what we're doing is we're running little groups and little sessions with different cohorts of people. So students are coming in on the 30th of January and teachers are coming in. We've had some community members come in. We're reaching out to the PTOs to ask them to kind of take a look and sit down. And Eustaquio wants to run this with some of you as well. So the purpose of it is to see accessibility and to really watch, like there's like 10 tasks, like look for the board minutes, look for athletics, look for 7th grade something, and just really see how many clicks it takes to get to where it needs to be just for usability. We're still working on usability. So Eustaquio, I remembered. So I'm just letting him know that. So at our next meeting, he'll probably ask if anybody could stay over a little bit just to kind of help us through that process. But the changes that have been made have been great. We're continuing to do those. So thank you
Great.
for letting me jump in.
Thank you.
I have
Um,
one more if you have time. Do you have time for one more? Okay, sure. One more thing, when it comes to like accessibility and like ease of information, I would love to get a feel from the teachers if they find Seesaw to be burdensome at this point or something that's helpful. As a parent, I hear a lot that they're going to two places to find the same information that could be on just an email, but they'll miss it if it's just on Seesaw and they'll miss it if it's just on email. So I don't know how much that costs us to have that contract every year, but it seems like something that might be a thing kind of that had its place during COVID and maybe could not be part of the next budget year.
Okay, we'll find out.
Yeah, so I have another, at the Berwick Selectmen's meeting, last week, was it last week? Last week, yeah. So what, Captain Locke did an overview of the Asher training, which happened in June of this year. And that stands for Active Shooter Hostile Event. And what's the R stand for? Response. And at that meeting, he just kind of discussed what happened is they came in after the hoax situation that occurred in Sanford and then the Lewiston tragedy. The area folks got together and said, we need to be practicing and running through some of this stuff. So they did a tabletop exercise in April, and then in June, they came into the Noble Middle School and had an event. Out of that event, they came up with some pluses and minuses and things that needed to be worked on. One of the things they discussed, that Jerry discussed at the Berwick Selectmen's meeting, was the reality that anybody that's on the emergency response teams, their radios do not work well in the buildings. That is not something that is just particular to MSAD 60. It's kind of like it's schools and the way that schools are built. But what he did say to the select board, or at least to the folks that he was walking out with, was that he was a little frustrated because he thought the fix would be fairly easy with like a $10,000 repeater or antenna on the building. And I'm not sure where he got that information, and I did follow up with him on it, so he knows I'm throwing him under the bus right now. But the reality of it is we did look at that probably 6 years ago. I actually called up Chris Russo, who was our former tech guy, and said, Chris, what do you remember? It was like a $50,000 to $100,000 fix per building to put the radios, the repeater on each of our buildings per building. We worked with Southern Maine Communications on that. They're a great outfit that does a lot of our work with radios. So at that point, the other piece of that is that that would not have impacted us in a way positive. Like it wasn't going to work with our radios. It was strictly to set it up for the emergency response teams around us. And we didn't feel like we could do that. Like as a district, if the towns wanted to do that, or the folks that would be fine, we would certainly host it, but we didn't feel like that was the right thing to do for us. He also shared with me that Sanford had figured out a fix because they also had similar issues when the whole hoax went down for them. So I called the former chief, he just retired, lucky dude, and he said that the fix was actually, they switched their frequencies to, I got to look at the language, UHF versus VHF, I believe is what it was. I'll have to look at it exactly.
So the police department.
The police department did. And so what he did, I said, what did you do for a fix? And he said, the schools didn't do anything. We did. We switched our entire radio band to UHF, which is the same as the school. We had been VHF, and that band was less effective in the buildings. UHF was and is better getting through and out of the buildings. But he said the rest of the city was already on UHF. So this was Sanford itself. He's like, so I don't know how that will work. Our situation is that we have multiple towns working with different frequencies and all that stuff. So what Audra and I talked about, and thank you, because Peg brought it to my attention that the conversation had happened. So I was able to get ahead of it with Jerry and stuff. So we will follow up with the emergency folks and say, what can we do? Is there an ability to change over to the UHF versus the VHF? I think, and see if that helps with things. The other piece that, and I think that was actually in the report, there's a follow-up that says they were going to reach out to SAD 60. So I expect we will probably reach out first and try to get that taken care of. So just wanted you to know, because that was out there in the world. The other thing, it was actually Rob from Durgo Feed who brought it to Peg's attention. He also talked about the Stop the Bleed kits, which is basically trauma kits. So if you need a tourniquet or whatever during that. So he was out here tonight and we were chatting, and he's going to follow up with a company that may actually donate, or at least at a significant discount, kits for us. So I'll follow up with him about that too. So good things. But so if you hear that in Berwick, that we are doing our diligence, I think that's
That we didn't, I mean, it came across, I think the phrase Jerry used, unfortunately, was that it fell on deaf ears. So the parents that I immediately heard from were really frustrated. So, and I told him if it was $10,000 a building, I'm pretty sure it would have been done 20 years ago when he says it first came up. So,
yeah. So, I mean, and it has been, it's always an issue like that. Our buildings are brick and concrete, and that's a very difficult radio situation. You know, in the building, all of our, we have radios that work really well. It's just going outside is the problem.
The other thing is that he also said Crisis Go is working really well for our first responders.
Yeah.
awesome.
So, yes.
Yeah, that didn't get transferred.
Yeah.
Yes.
And well, yeah, we talked about that actually. He's like, you know, Crisis Go has been a game changer for the responders to be able to come into the, I think the biggest problem for the first responders with Crisis Go and all of the radio piece is there's a lot to sort through, because there's a lot of chatter that comes through when any of this stuff happens. So if you're on multiple radio frequencies or whatever, that, and that's actually in the report too, is that they had a hard time discerning which communications were the right ones for them. So they're working on that aspect of things, but Crisis Go has definitely been a hit. So I forgot about that. Yep. So that was just my little update.
And I wanted to remind the board that the community breakfast is happening next Wednesday morning. If you're able to go, it's a wonderful event. Good to meet the people in the community who are doing so much to help our students.
Where is that?
It's in the library.
Oh, okay. Same as last year?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I had asked them to invite all of you. I don't know if you guys got invitations or.
I don't think
I did.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Did you? I'll go back and dig it out. See if I missed it.
Yeah, it's a great, usually we have a nice group of
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
like 40. Last year we had 40 folks who came in, and they've been doing internships and experiences with kids during,
That
after
was really
school hours. It's
great.
pretty good.
event.
Yep, it's good.
Just to follow up on our public speaker, Karen Saracena, that just some follow-up. It sounds like that's a really difficult situation for that young boy, obviously. And we have a community member grandmother who feels strongly about what happened there. So just some follow-up one way or another to make sure that is followed up with, that we are doing literally everything we can and should be doing to provide a safe environment for her grandson to learn.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Karen, for being here tonight. Anything else? And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Public input?
Second public input?
Oh.
Sorry, it's why the rest of us sit here, okay? We're a team.
I haven't done this in a year. Okay, do we have any more public input from the community members? Okay, now do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
All right, thank you.